It's not the destination. It's not like, okay, this is what I'm going to achieve. But while you're living your life, you will find that that the purpose, you will find, that you're enjoying life. You will find that there's moments of joy. And I think that's what I want to share, is that, it's while you're living and being open. I think it's staying open to everything that you can possibly experience. And
so where I would love to start, Corinne, is with your book, The Art of Grieving. We live in a society that has great difficulty talking about death. And over the years, we have lost our connection to death. Nowadays, there are few rituals concerning death, and burial ceremonials are quickly dealt with. We expected to get over any loss swiftly and move on because we feel that expressing our grief is a sign of weakness. An overt mourning is too awkward for onlookers to witness. These aspects of mourning have crept into our perception of what is regarded as normal around death, because the rituals and ceremonies around it have disappeared over the years. Death has become unfamiliar despite it occurring every minute of the day. So where I would love to start with you is, despite death occurring every minute, even every second, why do you think we have lost connection with it?
Yeah, for me, I think when we talk about death and we talk about grief, it brings our own mortality to the surface. So we kind of realize, oh, life is very fragile, and it goes just like this, So a lot of people find that difficult. And we are so busy with being happy all the time and joy and everything that's good, that when something bad happens, we tend to be like, oh, I'm not comfortable with that. We take a step back because we want to go back to happy. We want to go back to joy. And I think that's what the difficulty comes from. So what I see also is that funerals and, any type of losses are dealt with very, very, very quickly. But grief doesn't go very quickly, even though after you have lost a loved one, the grief is not done within a week or two. The grief stays.
Yeah.
And I think we kind of forget that a little bit, that although life goes on, the person is still grieving.
And how does your personal interest come into play in relation to grief?
I think it's I think everybody has a path, and I think my path has led me to work more with grief. It has come to me rather than me finding it or pursuing it.
And through that, have you had your own personal experience with grief?
Yes, my experience with grief started when I was a child. That was my first biggest heartbreak, if you like, is when I was, it was just before my 7th birthday when my baby sister died. So it came to me very earlier on in my life, this experience of grief. And that, I think, has influenced my path in my career choice, in what I do. And I know a lot of people say, when they come to see me in my practice, they are able to open up and talk to me. And I think, I don't know, maybe I give this this vibe, or I provide that space.
And you share your story of being 7 years old. What was that experience like for you? Was it something that, you talk about having this space to kind of heal through it. Did you have that opportunity, or was it sort of more that societal influenced about kind of like, let's move forward as quickly as we can?
I think I can only talk from my experience, from what I remember as a child, because that was a very long time ago. But what I remember was, as a child, people forget that you are grieving.
Yeah.
I think. And the only person that I talked to about the loss of my sister was my father. I was able to talk to him about it, and he was open to answering my question, because I had lots of questions. But I think when you are a child, at some point you are busy also being a child, and you put that grief to the side, and you are busy becoming a teenager, living your life. But my own experience is that I put that grief away for a while, but then it came back to me. I think in my 20s, this grief came out, and then I was like, what is that, and then I had to sit down and go, okay, it was because I didn't resolve, I never got over it, that grief stayed with me. And although life was happening, the grief was like still there. So that for me in my 20s was like this big revelation that a lot of the things that I was experiencing was to do with that unresolved grief. And that's when I started working on it and give it space.
And do you find that with the clients that you work with, we're sort of talking about this societal influence of moving forward as quickly as we can, and obviously when things aren't processed, as you're suggesting, they don't just go away, and some of them sort of just bubbling underneath the surface, sort of in our behavior of day to day. When people come to you sort of in that experience, like, can you speak more to how you sort of approach something like that?
I mean, it depends. Everybody has their unique story. So sometimes people come to me with one thing, but then when we explore, then we find, okay, this is coming from grief. This is something that you are still grieving, and once that's acknowledged, and that's like you being the witness, I think that gives the person that space to go, okay, yes, I need to grieve. I need to explore my loss. And so for different individual people that I meet, it's different stories, different things that is happening. It can be a physical ailment. It can be feeling angry, or feeling having a low moods, not really depression, but feeling low, and not having the motivation, or feeling disappointed. But then when we sit down and we explore, then it comes to the surface that there is some unresolved grief there.
And in your book, you speak about sort of the experience of isolation that a lot of people have when they experience grief, and that in that circumstance, it can be quite difficult to reach out for help. And in turn, they're sort of carrying that pain alone and in silence. How would you sort of recommend people that are maybe around someone experiencing that? Like, how can people approach to kind of provide that safe space for people to start feeling comfortable to truly sort of express what they are feeling?
I think is to be honest and talk to your family and to your friends how you are feeling. I think that is a conversation that needs to happen. I think sometimes people are busy with their own lives and they don't realize that you are feeling low, and you are still grieving, you are still in that sadness, your heart is broken. But having that conversation and saying, hey, I'm not feeling great, I'm still grieving, I think that's very important.
And what do you think that people are afraid of? Because obviously when we choose silence over expression, there's that fear of expression. But sort of throughout your experience in working with different people, what is it that they are afraid of?
I think it can come from the fear that maybe the other person won't want to talk about it.
Yeah.
I think you don't want to pour your sadness on somebody else. I think a lot of them, talking from my own experience, sometimes I think, oh, I don't want to talk about this because I don't want to, pour my sadness on this person because I don't know how this person will react, or whether that person's opinion of me will change if I say, I'm still grieving.
Yeah.
Even though it's been a while, I'm still grieving, whether this person will think you should have moved on by now, So I think sometimes I'm talking from my from my own experiences that, you are fearful of what you will get back because the grief is already heavy. And then to have somebody rejecting you or not able to hold your grief, that's going to be even more heavy for you to carry. So I think sometimes you kind of, that reluctance come from there. But when you do find your tribe, it's such a relief when you find that group, that support system. That's so great when you're able to just talk freely and openly, and people understand where you are coming from. They understand how you are feeling, and they give you that space. I think that's really amazing, and that's what I see also when I was running some groups for women. That when they meet and they are able to talk, they feel so much support there, so much love there, and they are able to just be themselves and say what they're truly feeling.
Yeah, it seems like there's sort of almost an aspect of like shame that comes with it if people sort of put pressure on themselves or an expectation that they need to sort of stop feeling these feelings by a certain date. In your experience, is there sort of a time limit to grief? Is everyone's experience different? Like, how do you know, is there such thing as grieving for too long and sort of not healing the process? Like, how do you approach time when it comes to the grief experience?
I think grief is unique. Everybody grieves differently. I think for most of us, we can carry that grief. And grief can be a lifetime. It doesn't have like a 6 months or 12 months, 2 years, 3 years. It's a lifetime. You carry it for the rest of your life. But what makes the difference is that, are you able to carry it on your own, or do you need help? Because sometimes it can happen that the grief is so overwhelming that you do need professional help. You do need a grief counselor. You do need somebody to help you to process all the different aspects of grief. But grief can be with you a lifetime. Personally, I lost my sister when I was just 7, and I still grieve her, and I'm now in my 50s. So, grief stays with you a lifetime.
And when we speak about grief, I know that you sort of define it as when love meets loss, which I think is a really beautiful definition of it. I've never come across something like that. It was really beautiful.
I think it's when you love somebody so much and you're not able to spend your life with this person, and this person is no longer physically here. So, but the love doesn't stop. The love still lives on. And for me, that's the definition of grief, is you still love, but it's in a different space, different time.
How does something like grief play into, say, heartbreak? Because we sort of speak about grief in relation to someone passing, but I know in your book you also sort of speak about it to a relationship sort of heartbreak or break up. How is sort of grief different between the loss of someone and sort of coming out of a relationship and feeling that loss, but sort of still having that person alive and well today?
After a breakup or a divorce, it's like you have this life that you thought you would have, right? You have this life, and you have dreams, and you have the future that you think you will have. You think you will grow old with this person, and and then all of a sudden, this is not the reality anymore. You have a totally different path now. This relationship is over, and you have this very different path. So the grief comes from grieving this life that you thought you would have.
Yeah.
And now having to rebuild something new, and finding out who you are again, finding your strength, and finding maybe having to move, and so there's lots of things that come from a divorce or from a breakup. It's starting all over again. So your life is totally different. So there is a strong element of grief as well when it comes to breakup.
Yeah. And when it comes to healing, you sort of describe it as when grief and love come together. What does that look like as a practice?
I think it's remembering that our blueprint, if you see about our core, is love.
Mm.
And when you receive yourself with love, you can move forward. So the love is not a romantic type of love, but it's a love that comes from the heart. It's a love that comes from kindness, compassion. So when you show yourself that kind of love, you are able to make the step that you need to move forward. And that's when the healing happens. Because very often we blame ourselves. We lose ourselves a little, and when you go back to that, that's what helps you to move forward.
And in terms of sort of self-care practices in this process, what is a practice that you could share with us that someone, if they are experiencing grief in this moment, could, get off the podcast and integrate or start implementing into their life to start helping them heal through this process?
I think there are several self-care practices in the book, and it's difficult for me to pinpoint one or two, but it's following your heart. It's looking at what you need in this moment. I mean, one of them that I can share, which most people can do, is really taking a moment and turning inwards and listening. What do I need right in this moment? And that in itself is a self-care practice, is to really listen. And when you listen to what you need, then you can make that step, That's a very easy one that anybody can do.
I feel like that's a beautiful practice just for life in general, isn't it? It's just we have to sort of check in with ourselves. And I know that you're very passionate about the mind-body connection. What can you share with us today about that?
I think it's not separate. That connection with the physical and the mind, it's connected. So anything that is happening in our mind influences how the body reacts. And sometimes what the body is telling us, it's what's going on inside. So when we see that connection, we are able to take the steps that we need. Sometimes it's a simple thing like just just taking a moment and doing some breathing exercises that can really calm everything down. If you're experiencing maybe some anxiety, or you're feeling a little bit panic, just taking that moment, just like, slowing down the breath, can have such an amazing effect. So for me, the mind-body connection is so important when we're talking about healing, because it's connected, it's not separate.
And I'd love to speak to you about gratitude, because something that I found really interesting in your book that you shared was when you speak about gratitude in relation to grief, it's not necessarily being grateful for the passing of a loved one, but it's being grateful for the moments that were experienced. Can you share more about gratitude?
Gratitude is a tough one, because I also find that difficult in my own grieving journey. How can you be grateful? How can you be grateful? But then I started to be more open to the idea of it. And once I did it, I felt so much better. I felt that, oh yes, there is things that I can still be grateful for. Because around us, there's so many other things that are happening. For me, it was being grateful that I had, for example, my father, who helped me in those early stages of my grief. And, I met beautiful people on my path, who helped me to discover more about myself and what I can do. So sometimes the gratitude comes in different forms. It takes you to places where you didn't think you were possible to be grateful for.
And I know that's sort of something that you focus on in line with the work that you do, is how to live with purpose and love with zest. Can you share more about how people can do that?
I think it's a discovery. It's not the destination. It's not like, okay, this is what I'm going to achieve. But while you're living your life, you will find that the purpose. You will find that you're enjoying life. You will find that there's moments of joy. And I think that's what I want to share, is that it's while you're living and being open. I think it's staying open to everything that you can possibly experience, and just welcome those experiences, and that will come. The purpose will come. The living with joy will come. For me, the finding the purpose, took years, but it was developing. It's because every step that I took me to that purpose, and I'm still working on it. So it's not that I've arrived, I am still working on it.
Yeah, I find that really interesting, particularly in relation to grief, because obviously, some people who lose people that are really close to them, I feel like a lot of us would associate so much purpose to that person. And when that person is no longer there, the loss is also in that sense of purpose. So it makes sense that it's like this journey of discovery and kind of trying to find what that is. And do you find that sort of this idea of purpose, because I feel like it interests me, because I feel like a lot of people kind of think it's like the end game. And as you're suggesting, it's this journey, it's this process, it's this evolution. How do you kind of encourage your clients? How do you yourself, like day to day, what is something that people can focus on to kind of make them feel like they're sort of closer and connected to that sense of purpose?
I think it's staying open. Stay open to things that comes your way. just go with the experience this new life, this new path. And like I said, the purpose will come, whether it's you want to work more with people who have experienced a similar loss, whether it's you want to completely change your life and do something completely different, whether you want to take a year and travel around the world, that comes to you, because everybody is so different and unique, and everybody has something to offer. And it's just experience this life, and trust that you will find something that really speaks to your heart, something that really gets you up in the morning and make you want to welcome this day.
And in your experience of grief and in the people that you work with, like obviously it can be quite a dark time for people. What is it that you think people want to hear during that time?
I think what people would like is just that you're there. You don't need to hear words. You don't need to hear things, but just having that person there, that presence of somebody there, that somebody that says, hey, I am here, and just sitting in silence is sometimes all you need. And knowing that that person is there for you, I think that's what you need.
Very beautiful. And I think it sort of goes again. It's like these practices, I feel like, are just lessons for life in general, aren't they? When people are going through harder times, it really is just about having someone there in your presence and just being attentive to you. And you don't necessarily have to come in and say words or fix it, but just being there is just so important.
Absolutely, yes.
Well, thank you so much for this beautiful conversation. I really enjoyed it. You have a beautiful energy.
Thank
It's been very lovely. I'd love to ask you, on a final note, Corinne, what does it mean to you to be human?
That's a very deep question, right?
Yeah.
So for me, it's how wonderful it is to live this beautiful, chaotic, messy, confusing life.
Yeah.
And it's a life that's, takes us on so many different paths, different adventures, if I can say the word. But when we are faced with difficult times and life takes us on unexpected path, is to remember that we have the resources and we are resourceful, and that we can find the strength. And it's a strength that comes from the heart. It's to remember that. And that helps us to face those difficult times.